So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening in case there are colleagues joining from other parts of the world. A very, very warm welcome to this Asia-Europe People's Forum webinar. We're extremely happy that you joined us. Large number of colleagues, activists, movement leaders, researchers, students from parts of Asia and Europe are here with us today. A very warm welcome to you. A bit about Asia-Europe People's Forum. Asia-Europe People's Forum is a forum, a platform of social formations, social struggles, of research bodies, civic organizations, NGOs, for instance, of parliamentarians as well, which comes together for a progressive Asia and Europe, for a just Asia and Europe, and keeps at its center the question of people, the ideas of people and aspirations of people towards a just, equitable world, towards a world which is ecologically sustainable, towards a world which sees economic and social justice, towards a world which sees democracy and progress and the benefit of humankind. Within the Asia-Europe People's Forum, colleagues who are not conversant with it, was built in 1996 around the Asia-Europe meeting, the ministerial processes, ASEM as it's called, started from 1996. ASEM brings these conversations to the governmental level. So that's how the Asia-Europe People's Forum is its counterpart or its citizens' part, which pushes these voices, which brings those agendas onto the ASEM table on the one hand, but also on the other hand, builds solidarities of people's struggles across Asia and Europe. And today, our effort at this panel, this webinar, as we call it these days, the virtual webinar, is actually to build understanding, mutual understanding, and reflections around the ongoing, the question of what is today the focus, the farmers' struggles in India, the peasant struggles in India, the lessons we are learning on a daily basis from these struggles, the advances such struggle has made, or the processes of such struggle. I will not speak in monolith because there are many, many people's formations who have given solidarities to the ongoing farmers and peasants movement in India. And likewise, we're going to also be exchanging certain lessons from what's happening in other parts of the world. We have very, very eminent speakers today, and I will, in a bit, introduce each of our speakers. My name is Sandeep Chachra. I am the editor of Agrarian South Journal, a journal of international political economy, published by the SAGE. I also co-chair the World Urban Campaign of the UN Habitat. In my day job, I work as the executive director of ActionAid Association. I'm based here in Delhi, and a very, very warm welcome once again to all of you and to our esteemed guests, speakers, and leaders who have joined us. Thank you for taking the time to join us here today. Despite your hectic schedules, each one of you, I know, at different locations in the middle of many, many meetings, still you have considered this an important space to devote your time towards. Friends, this particular webinar is being organized by the Food Sovereignty Group of what is called the Asia-Europe People's Forum. The words themselves are self-explanatory. The question of food, the question of sovereignty, the question of land, the question of peasants, the question of those who make the futures of our world possible, and those who increasingly are under assault from several hegemonic forces, as if food can be produced through engines, as if food can become an industry, as if agriculture can be corporatized. So it is within this context that this today's panel discussion and webinar is located. Friends, we just a couple of housekeeping announcements. We are here together for 2 hours, of which we have already spent about 7-8 minutes. We today are going to have our esteemed speakers speak with us, share their experiences with us, for about 12 to 15 minutes in the first round. We're going to try and make time towards the end to have discussions. So we'll hear their perspectives first, we'll hear their ideas first, and then we're going to have some time for your questions. Those of us, this webinar is also being transmitted live on Facebook Live. So in case you type questions here, we'll be able to receive them. In case you have joined in here and registered as a participant, please do type your questions in the question and answer box. And we as organizers will try our best to try and reach out to you. Joining me today in this organizing and moderating team is Katie from the Transnational Institution. Katie isn't able to sort of log in. At some stage she will in a bit. Joining me here in the organizing team are Tabitha Spence. Also joining us here are other guests from the Asia-Europe People's Forum. I saw Professor Anuradha Chinoy. I see Shushovan Dhar. I see Olivia. So many colleagues are joining us here today. A warm welcome to all of you too. Thank you for being here. Thank you for expressing your solidarity. So without much ado, let me come to the topic today. The topic, as you have noticed in the posters, is called Dare to Win. And this refers to the recent win of the peasant struggles called the farmers' protest, often called the farmers' protest. I think it's much, much more beyond that. It's not just one act of protest in India, which has been going on over a couple of years now. In the end of this year, in the end of last year, sorry, I'm in 2022, but in the end of last year, the government of India repealed, and this was again passed. The Repeal Act was also passed in both the houses of our parliament. The 3 objectionable farm laws on which the farmers' struggles, to begin with in Punjab, soon joined by Haryana, soon joined in solidarity by peasant struggles from all over, by labor movements from all over, had it reversed. The government had it reversed in face of stiff, unending people's resistance. The acts, I will not get into that. Enough and more material is available on Google and websites, and some of our speakers will touch on them. The 3 farm acts in general were, as a tendency, promoting corporatization, promoting lesser farmers' autonomy, putting farmers and peasants at further risk to the market, also while also not ensuring the minimum support prices, or prices which are offered as the base prices below which the food cannot be sold, below which the produce cannot be sold. As you know, it's a very unequal playing field. The proposal by the government was to, under the quote unquote, the idea of opening it up for corporates with the ostensible or stated purpose of reducing the role of the middlemen. But that therein, of course, lies the whole risk. When on the one hand, you do not have a guarantee of a support price, on the other hand, you're exposed to the risks and to the hegemonic negotiations or bargaining of large and mighty corporates. So there's a whole history to it. This is nothing new. We know that agriculture everywhere ails, peasantry everywhere ails, and it has been for many years, minus the question of land reforms, minus the question of state and reducing state subsidies for farmers, has been a very unequal field. It is in this context that the farmers' struggle had evolved, and let me say symbolized by the recent farmers' protest. So the agrarian crisis is not new. Let me say it found an outpouring, it found a visibility, it found a national cognition with this ongoing farmers movement. So this is the brief background. I'll not speak much to it because we have eminent leaders who are immersed in these processes, who are leading these processes, who have been with these processes for long now. And we are honored to have them all here, many of them here today in the limits which the webinar format permits. Our first speaker for the day, friends. And I have the honor of welcoming Dr. Darshan Pal. Dr. Darshan Pal, welcome, please. Dr. Darshan Pal is actually a medic, and you'll be surprised. He's a medic, and we have two medics here today, incidentally. He's a medic who practiced medicine, who was in the civil medical services of the government of Punjab for a bit before he left to farm his own land. And thereafter, he given these issues, given his exposure to these issues as a person from Punjab, given the agrarian crisis post-Green Revolution in Punjab, he's been seeing all that. And given that, he joined the Bharatiya Kisan Union for a bit, and thereafter the Krantikari Kisan Union, which later he is now the president of. Dr. Darshan Pal is one of the members of the seven-member committee of the Samyukta Kisan Morcha, which was also negotiating with the government on the one hand, but much more importantly was the spirit and the elixir of the farmer struggle, which is an unending struggle despite the cold, despite the heat, the protests which had been going on for the last 2 years. I am honored to welcome you, sir, and I request you now, if you want to open your remarks with how you see this movement, given that you are really at the center of it, part of it, an integral part of it, how you've seen it, what lessons you probably are learning from it on a daily basis, what more lessons are anticipated. But tell us briefly about the farmers movement, and then on to your reflections of where we are and where we should be going altogether. Thank you, and I welcome you, Dr. Darshan Pal, for your opening remarks.
Okay, sir. I thank Asian European People's Forum for inviting me to have glimpses of this farmers movement, which just concluded on 11th of this month. So 11th of December, sorry. Now I want to introduce initially that this farmers movement, as it went from very low ebb to high ebb, we never thought about that we are going to fight such a long, such a big movement. We never thought. We were thinking that in the era of COVID, when COVID curfews were there, when COVID lockdown was there, and we initially had actually on the 2017, we were fighting for minimum support price and freedom from indebtedness. We were fighting that we fought for 3 years. We had big programs in Delhi, people's, farmers, parliaments, parallel parliaments, and other large meetings were held, and on foot big yatras were taken out all over India. But we came to know in the June, when curfew and lockdown was there, that government has imposed or government has promulgated 3 ordinances. Immediately we started reading them, analyzing them, and we came to conclusion, particularly in Punjab and Haryana, that our land, our agriculture, our markets are being handed over to the corporates. So that sense, that fear prevailed among the minds of almost all the people. Then from those MSP and freedom from indebtedness, this struggle shifted towards that we want these 3 ordinances first, then laws to be repealed. And this repealing of 3 laws was taken by the farmers of Punjab first and foremost. On the one hand, at All India level, All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee, it was leading this movement at All India level. But in Punjab, the Punjab chapter of AIKSCC was taking this movement in a very, very challenging way. Challenging way means because the agrarian development in Punjab has come to this stage that markets, land, and our crops. People thought that each and everything will get away from our hands. Our land will be handed over to the corporates, and our markets will be taken by the corporates. So, with this understanding, with these feelings, the farmer unions of Punjab, they started a struggle in such a way that whole of the Punjab was engulfed in this movement. Not only farmers community only, almost I think when the first tractor demonstration was taken out in Punjab and memorandums were submitted to the elected representatives of BJP and Akali Dal, on that day, in that demonstration, first time I realized that more than 65 to 70% of youth was in those marches. And after one after the other program, the Punjabi society was so mobile that almost all the political parties except BJP, all political parties, all religious institutions, all religious individuals, all the cultural activists, all the singers, everybody came in support of the movement. Not only in support of, they were involved physically and mentally in the movement. So once it happened on 25th of September that almost whole Punjab was closed. There was a band, complete band in the Punjab, and from 1st October there was a complete blockade of railways. There was a complete free blocking of toll plazas. There was a complete lockdown of the BJP representatives, and also two corporate houses, Adani and Abani. Slogan was given that their products and services should be boycotted in Punjab, and later on this slogan was taken over by All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee, and this movement spread to at all India level. But in October, if we see, the central government tried to bluff the farmers' leaders. They tried to invite the farmer leaders, and they did not have a proper dialogue, and farmers had to boycott the meeting with the central government 2 times. And that was projected in the media that there is a big struggle is going to be in between the farmers of Punjab and the government of Delhi. And the time came when on 26th of November, there was a call by the AIKSCC till on 26th of October. These farmers organizations were separately working on each and every on their own fronts. But on 27th of October in Delhi, almost all the farmers organizations, they came together and decided to march to Delhi unitedly. And on 7th of November, another culmination took place when 100% organizations of India, they came together. They decided to have a march to Delhi collectively, and a banner was given the name Samyukta Kisan Morcha. So Samyukta Kisan Morcha took shape on 7th of November. But on Punjab, something else was happening. In Punjab, the whole Punjabi society was in a mood to fight against the Delhi government. They had in their mind, subconscious mind, yeah, Delhi as a central political power has always discriminated against Punjab. So Punjab agriculture economy, border state, Sikh community in majority, these factors culminated into such a unity that on 26th of November, the peoples from Punjab, they marched towards Delhi on their tractors and trolleys in such a way, it was looking as if some huge battle of Panipat is going to take place. So 3 battles in Panipat previously took place, and in the same area on 26th and 27th of November, 4th Panipat battle started, and that battle in which the Punjabi farmers, Sikh farmers played a central role, leading role, and their brethren from Haryana, they came along with them, and ultimately that struggle spread from Punjab borders to Haryana, then to other areas, and under the leadership of SKM, this movement ultimately spread not only into India only. I think the Indians who were settled in other parts of the world, they came in solidarity with it. All other forces other than farming community, they came in support of this. They directly indulged into this movement. As you see, the langars in the community kitchens in the borders of Delhi, in dharna sites, these were a big attraction for the people of the world and people of the India. So if we see that surrounding Delhi, all the borders, in all those borders, the farmers from UP, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, other parts of India, they assembled there, they sat there. In the first few days, we thought the central government will come to the dialogue and they will resolve the issue. But December and January, these were the 2 months when the hectic negotiation took place. But government was in a mood, and they told us that they can just see that some of, if you want to reform these acts, laws, that can be done, or that can be hold for 1.5 years, but no repealing. But as you see, the farmers had a mood that either we will win or our dead bodies will go back to the Punjab. Either Kanoon Wapsi or Ghar Wapsi. So this was the commitment in the minds of the farmers all over, say, in dharna sites. So that commitment, conviction, continuity, and a peaceful agitation, ultimately they have tried to give us various adjectives of separatist or say Khalistanis, Pakistanis, Andolanjivis, etc., etc. But the farmers' leaders, in a very peaceful way, in a very calm discussions, they tried to keep their farmer unions united, and they spread their base from one place to the other, and almost all of India was involved or indulged into the Bharat Bandh calls, railway block calls, road block calls, or such calls were being reciprocatively by the people of India. They always waited that SKM should give some call, and every call, every announcement by the SKM was observed all over India. So finally, I see, you may also make it very sure that this struggle finally on 19th of November, Pradhan Mantri ji, Modi ji, after Lakhimpur Kheri massacre, 4 farmers were killed by mowing under jeep, with the jeep of the son of the Home Minister. Before that, they tried to suppress the movement in Haryana, in Karnal, in Tohana, in Ambala, in various places. But every tactics of slowing down, of disintegrating our movement was repelled by the masses of India, by the farmers' movement. So I think these experiences, that United Farmers Organizations, number 1, very clear on their issues, number 2, number 3, making the target of our movement as corporates, engulfing our land and our crops, and also having the unity of different castes and religions, and also involvement of the other sections of the people. Say women in thousands and thousands, they participated in this movement. The BJP government tried to communalize the situation, but the farmers' movement diffused their whole tactics, and the Muslim and Jat farmers came together. The Gujjar and Meena farmers came together. So this unity, this clarity of the objectives, this peaceful movement, keeping the movement peaceful, I think the first time this thing is projected that the farmers can play a very important role in development, in transformation of the society of India, because this movement has compelled the Modi government to go back from their communal slogans, communalization of the society. This movement has inspired the thousands and lakhs of intellectuals and activists from the other section of the society. So this movement has generated an energy that has enhanced the feelings and the minds of the people of India, particularly the activists, that the Modi and Amit Shah's efforts to scuttle down the initiative, to scuttle down the movements can be stopped, can be broken, and that have played a big role. Farmers movement played a big role, and I think these are the lessons. This movement we have just suspended. Other issues are there. MSP issue is there. Indebtedness is there. Issue of Lakhimpur Kheri is there. Cases framed against us are there. So this movement is going to further play a big role in the socio-political life of the Indian people, Indian society, and I think the SKM which were formed on the 7th of November, it will play a huge, big role in coordinating not only farmers movement, but in having a coordinated activities with the working class. We had experience to have joint meetings and joint actions with the Central Trade Unions of India, of the workers, and that experience we will try to build up further, so that we can, we the people of India can not only play, but we may try to dislodge the fascistic dictatorial regime of India, and the people of India with the egalitarian society, with a society with equal status, with no exploitation, with no discrimination, can be established. Thank you.
Thank you for a very inspiring opening, Dr. Darshan Pal ji. Wonderful to listen to you, and thanks to you for covering so much ground. There are many issues which come up, and I think it's wonderful for the road for future that this movement has come and go to achieve. I celebrate what you have just shared, the energy of all the peoples, and I see on the chat box a range of solidarities from different parts of the world for you, for your struggles, for your organizations coming across. So thank you so much. One question which of course comes to me very quickly if you have time, how do you see the movement going ahead? As we know, there are several unresolved issues and you're battling with them on a daily basis. Things like land reforms, things like land to the landless. So how do you see the terrain of the movement going forward? If briefly, if you have time and you want to reflect on these issues now, before I move to our second guest.
Okay, Sandeep, when we were facing these three acts, at that time, though there was AIKSCC, but as we landed in this struggle, we could not consciously frame the issues. Now we have a time, now we have a network, now we have a identity, credibility. If we frame those issues now, then in future we can go ahead with a very transparent way, in a very clear, with a very clear targets, and a very clear, say Dhawale ji will tell us that the issues can be framed now in a much, say, clearer way than at the time in which we, in a corona lockdown period, in which we were forced to go for a struggle. Not we planned it, but we were to go for that struggle, and we did that. But after 1 year, we can say that we have now identity and credibility. We have a vision. We have a collective, say, a wisdom of all our organizations that we can go ahead with the future other issues also.
Wonderful. Immense solidarity has been demonstrated. Uh, Fragmentations, which usually are an enemy of social struggles, whether it's race, whether it's caste, whether it's gender, whether it's class, I think you sort of demonstrated a way to not let them infect the energies and the vision of the struggle. And I think there lies the hope. Across, I mean, that is why these questions, a lot of these questions come in your way in terms of what the future holds and what the future beckons. Let me also put it that way for these unresolved questions, not just in the north, but much more in the south, the agrarian question itself. And I think it will with very great hope that we all place in the struggles that you just described, and the resistance which it led under very difficult circumstances will give rise to. So I think that's where I would like now to take us, before I move on to Dr. Ashok Dhawale, to listen to his analysis of what are these unresolved issues, how does he see the future hold, what have been the lessons learned. But before I move there, I want to sort of welcome back my co-moderator, Katie, who's just messaged. She's joined us despite those computer problems. Katie, if you can show your face and say hi to all. Katie, are you here?
Hello. Yes, do you hear me now?
Yes. So welcome back. And
wonderful. I'm really sorry to be joining you all so late, but very glad to catch the end, at least, of Dr. Darshan Pal's intervention. Thanks very much, and thanks, Sandeep, for taking over.
I missed. I must admit, I missed something. I missed the co-organizer for this event. Apologies to the co-organizers. Break Free SOAS is a grassroots climate justice network. It's a climate justice campaigning organization. It works with the front lines, all kind of affected communities from climate and ecological injustices. It works particularly with the indigenous people and resists all sort of conquest, quote unquote, of agribusiness and fossil fuels. And from 2016 onwards, Break Free SOAS has been from Switzerland, as you can make out, has also been, centering its mobilizations on the financing of Swiss banks to these very industries. So Break Free SOAS is a co-organizer along with Asia Europe People's Forum, of which we all are part here, of this particular event. And this is the co-organizer. And now, and thanks Break Free SOAS for being a co-organizer to this event. Lovely to have you together. I think the future means more and more collaborations. And with this, I would very, very warmly welcome now Dr. Ashok Dhawale. Dr. Ashok Dhawale, it's an honor and a privilege to have you here with us today and your time here with us today. Incidentally, Dr. Ashok Dhawale, like Dr. Darshan Pal before him, have both dabbled with, are both medics and have both dabbled with medical practice. I believe, Dr. Dhawale, you gave up medical practice in 1983, so many decades ago. Yes. Around the time some of the webinar joinees here would have been born. So very nice to know that common history between the two of you. There are many other things common. Dr. Ashok Dhawale is the national president of All India Kisan Sabha, one of the largest Kisan platforms, or what is called the farmers platforms of India, affiliated with the Communist Party of India, Marxist. Dr. Ashok Dhawale is also the Central Committee member of the Communist Party of India, Marxist. Honored to have you here today, sir. He's been a peasant leader for several decades, both in Maharashtra, but elsewhere, and nationally, of course, as you know now, and has been at the forefront of peasant questions, intellectually, in movement, in organizing, in mobilizing as well. A couple of years ago, and Dr. Dhawale might refer to it today, he had organized a long march of indigenous people, tribals as we call it in India, farmers, peasant, landless people across Maharashtra, culminating in Mumbai. And in this particular process of the farmer struggles, as the national president of All India Kisan Sabha, but also as a peasant leader himself, they have been in complete joint solidarity, working together nationally, but also have been contributing immensely across the country to the articulation of peasant demands and the struggle, not just the resistance, but the struggle to advance some of those resolutions which are long-standing. I must also mention that that's not an easy task. And in the kind of the world we are here today in, those unresolved issues, those hanging issues, those lost agendas, those forgotten agendas of farmers and peasants, which are very, very relevant for the future of this world, which are probably the most critical for the future of this world, have been forgotten. Some years ago, many of us distantly were part of the national report in India, and I'm sure it applies to all your countries. We then called it the forgotten agenda of land reforms, as if that question never was, that freedom promise or that liberation promise was never to be resolved and only to be forgotten. I will not speak more. I have the honor and privilege of welcoming Dr. Ashok Dhawale. Dr. Ashok Dhawale, I had put a question for you. Maybe you want to begin with that, but please feel free. How do you look at the terrain of the farmers' struggles today, or the peasant struggles today within this land and more widely as well? And what do you think the unresolved issues are? Where do you see the future sort of beckons us? And what are your reflections in general of these processes which have been going on? Thank you. Honor and privilege, Dr. Ashok Dhawale, warmly welcome you. We all learn a lot from you, like the speaker before you, Dr. Darshan Pal ji. So please, the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Sandeep. All my distinguished panelists in this very, very interesting webinar that the Asia-Europe Forum has organized. I would particularly congratulate the Asia-Europe Forum for the title that they have given for this seminar, Dare to Win. I think that is just superb. And I really would like to congratulate all of you, all the organizers, co-organizers, everybody for this very, very important seminar. You see now this farmers' struggle in India, it was a historic struggle. It was an unprecedented struggle, not only in the history of India, but maybe perhaps in the history of the world. And it continued for 1 year and 15 days, 380 days totally. And that is something which is just amazing. Millions of farmers took part in it. Very rightly, Darshan Pal ji correctly said, it started from Punjab, it started from Haryana, then it went across to Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh. These were the 6 states which had gathered at the Delhi borders for this 1 year and 15 days. But the struggle spread to all over India. In more than 25 states in India, huge actions took place all throughout this 1 year. And therefore, it was in a very real sense, a nationwide struggle. Centered, of course, at the borders of the national capital, absolutely right, but spread all over the country. That is the beauty of this struggle, which first I would like to draw everybody's attention to. This struggle has come in the background of a very, very, as you correctly mentioned, an agrarian crisis in India. The agrarian crisis was aggravated. I would not say it began, but it was aggravated after the inauguration of the neoliberal policies in India in 1991. And only one symptom of that crisis I would like to draw the attention of all our viewers across the world. From 1995 to 2020, 25 years, more than 400,000 farmers in India have been forced to commit suicide due to indebtedness. This is something which is unprecedented anywhere in the world. 400,000 farmers committing suicide because they cannot pay off their debts. Out of these 400,000, 100,000 farmers have had to end their lives by suicide only in the last 7 years of the BJP government that is led by Mr. Narendra Modi, the current Prime Minister of India. Only in the last 7 years. So this will give you a picture of what exactly this is about. So this agrarian crisis has several aspects about which there is no time to go into right now. But let us come directly to this struggle. Darshan Pal ji has made my task much easier by going through a lot of ground. So I will not cover it again. But the struggle now intensified after the BJP central government put these 3 farm laws. In fact, it forced these 3 farm laws on the country. We have said these 3 farm laws were certainly anti-farmer, but they were not just anti-farmer. They were anti-people and they were pro-corporate. This is the 3 definitions of these farm laws: anti-farmer, anti-people, and pro-corporate. And that is why all these organizations came together to oppose those laws tooth and nail. Now, when these laws, what would have been their effects? The effects of these laws, in just 1 minute, I can tell you, because why such a huge struggle rose. These 3 laws, had they been implemented, they would have led to the end of the minimum support price regime, which has to some extent protected farmers in India from collapsing prices for their produce, number 1. It would have led to the end of government procurement of grains, which is going on this thing for the last several years in Punjab, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh, and partly in some other states. It would have led to the end of the grain stocks in the godowns of the government of India, because there would have been no procurement by the government. And as a result of this, it would have ended the entire public distribution system in India, which 810 million people, they get their grains through the public distribution system, which is called the rationing system in India. So 810 million people would have gone out of the cheap food grains that they were getting. That means it would have affected food security in India. It would have led to unimaginable increase in the levels of hunger. Already, all of you must be aware, in the World Hunger Index, which was recently announced, India ranks 101st among 116 countries in the world in 2021. This would have probably brought it to 117 had these laws been implemented. And the worst thing that would have happened, the entire agricultural market that would have gone in the hands of the corporates, both Indian and foreign. With these implementation of these laws, this is all that would have happened. And finally, with this, these laws would have also led to the land of Indian farmers going in the throats of the corporate lobby. So these are all the effects that would have occurred had these laws been actually implemented. This was realized by the farmers of India, and that is why they led this life and death struggle against these laws. What are the lessons that we learn? Let us come to that, and then I will answer your question, Sandeep, regarding the future course. What is we are thinking of in that? Very briefly in point form. Number one, 9 lessons we can draw. One minute I'll take to just explain what are these lessons. Number one, the first lesson we drew is that this was a fantastic united struggle of the farmers of India. Darshan Pal ji has given the background, so I'll not go into it. All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee played a very, very pioneering role in this. Then that became even more organizations joined, and then it became the Samyukta Kisan Morcha, the SKM. More than 500 farmers' organizations came together under the banner of the Samyukta Kisan Morcha, which has never happened in the entire history of India so far. And that is what gave, this unity gave the strength to the farmers' movement. That is one very important thing. Not only this, the entire peasantry, all classes in the peasantry came together in this struggle. This is a very important point which I want to underline. The agricultural workers, landless agricultural workers supported. Poor peasants were there in very, very large numbers. Middle peasants were there in very large numbers. Sections of rich peasants were also there as part of this struggle. So therefore, you have a situation from agricultural workers to rich peasants. Everybody became a part of this struggle. And this was an all-in peasant unity against the corporates and against the government, which was fully supported by the corporates. We had thousands of women, of course, tens of thousands of men, and we had thousands of youth along with the middle-aged and the aged. We had a huge coalition, which I think was very, very important. The second point, the agitation was tremendously helped by the support of the central trade unions and the entire working class of India. In fact, the 26th of November 2020, this entire struggle began as a joint struggle of the peasantry and the working class. On 26th November, we marched to Delhi, the farmers, and on 26th November 2020, the central trade unions gave a call for an all-India general strike of the working class, in which millions of workers also struck work. So the entire struggle began on the note of worker-peasant unity. And now on the 23rd and 24th of February, coming month, when the central trade unions have given a call for all India 2-day general strike, our Samyukta Kisan Morcha, in our meeting on the 15th of January, have given a call for full support to that all India strike in the nature of a rural strike all over India. So this has led to a very, very strong unity of the two main producing classes who actually lead to the wealth of this country. And I think they have come together, which is a very, very significant thing. Third thing, this agitation, this struggle countered tremendous repression of the central government, of the state governments. I want to say 715 farmers were martyred in the course of this 1-year struggle. 715 martyrs. Out of them, 5 of them, as Darshan Pal ji rightly said, in Lakhimpur Kheri. This is something that our world audience who have certainly been following. A Union Minister of State for Home of the BJP government led a convoy of cars to actually crush farmers. 4 farmers and a journalist were killed by a convoy of cars of Ajay Mishra Teni, who is a union minister in the central cabinet. And after 3 months, he still remains in the central cabinet. The shamelessness of this government knows no bounds. In any other democratic country, within 1 hour, anybody doing this would have been out of the cabinet and he would have been in jail on charges of murder and conspiracy. So this is the repression that the farmers faced, and yet they won this struggle. Fourth point, tremendous defamation. You cannot imagine the defamation that the government did, that some of the media did, that all their IT cells did. In every way, the farmers who are the feeders of the country, they were defamed by the government. They were maligned by the government, but all that also the farmers stood by. Number 5, the farmers' struggle triumphed over the worst health malady that has hit not only India but the world, and that is the COVID pandemic. The struggle began in the COVID pandemic, and it continued in the 1 year of the COVID pandemic, including the disastrous, deadly second wave from March to May 2021. And therefore, in spite of that, lakhs of farmers were there at the Delhi borders. They were facing tremendous cold, scorching heat, torrential rains, all that. Nothing deterred them. They triumphed even over COVID. Number 6, it was a completely peaceful struggle. Truth and non-violence, the tenets taught to India and the world by Mahatma Gandhi. These were the tenets of the farmers' struggle. Truth and non-violence, that is what we fought for, and peacefully, millions of farmers, there was no breach of peace anywhere. Although the government continued with its violent tactics, this was the thing. Number 7, it was a completely secular struggle. Farmers from all religions, Sikh, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, all religions, they were represented in the farmers' struggle. All castes in India, they came together. All regions, all states, farmers speaking all languages, everybody was together. And this was a fantastic, secular, inclusive struggle. And that is why it could not be crushed by the government as some other struggles were crushed. Number 8, it had a political impact. In the state assembly elections a few months ago, in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu, in West Bengal, the BJP, which had forced these laws on the nation, it was very badly defeated. The Samyukta Kisan Morcha had given a call, defeat the BJP. And now also, in the coming 5 assembly elections that are coming in February and March, the Samyukta, and these are very important states, states which are the frontline states of the farmers' struggle, Punjab, Uttarakhand, and most important, Uttar Pradesh, the largest state in India. The Samyukta Kisan Morcha has given a call, similarly, defeat the BJP in these 3 major states and 2 other small states where the elections are going to be held. And I'm sure that we will win there also. So this is the political impact, because only because of this political impact, that is the real reason why the Modi government had to take back those laws. They had to repeal the laws because we made a political impact. The farmers' struggle made this political impact. Number 9 and the last point, and then I'll come in 2-3 minutes to the future. The 9th and the last point is the most important distinguishing feature of this farmers' struggle was that it was directed. It was directly against the corporates, against neoliberalism, against imperialism, and against the government of the day in India, which was supporting and which was completely aligned with the corporate lobby, both Indian and foreign. The World Trade Organization has had a very big role in these farm laws being made. This we should never forget. IMF, World Bank, World Trade Organization, the entire imperialist structure. That is what, there is no time to explain, but all our readers and all our viewers are very much conversant with this. It is they who wanted that these farm laws should be there, apart from the corporate lobby in India. So therefore, this was a very important struggle. It directly, and therefore, Noam Chomsky, the very, very outstanding left American intellectual, he gave an interview where he said that the farmers' struggle in India is like a beacon of light in these dark times, and all the struggles of the working people should take inspiration and an example from the farmers' struggle of India. We are very grateful to Noam Chomsky for having taken note of this very, very historic farmers' struggle. So this is one very important 9 conclusions which we have said. Finally, I will just like to say Sandeep's point, what about the future? The future is, as Darshan Pal correctly pointed out, this has given tremendous inspiration to the people of India. This victorious farmer struggle, because repealing farm laws in parliament, the same parliament which had made these farm laws was forced to repeal them on the 29th of November 2021. This has led to all the working people, if a huge struggle can be led, certainly we can win. And as you rightly said, dare to win. If we can dare to win, yes, we shall win. And therefore the working class, all the other poor agricultural workers, students, youth, women, all of them have got a tremendous boost from this victory. There are many other issues which you very correctly pointed out. Land reforms is one very important point. Today, instead of land to the tiller, which was the slogan of the freedom struggle, and for which the Kisan movement, at that time only the All India Kisan Sabha was the first organization. Huge struggles, Telangana, Tebhaga, Punnapra Vailar, Warli Adivasi struggle, Surma Valley struggle in Assam, all these struggles, Tripura, Ganamukti Parishad, all of them were led by the All India Kisan Sabha against imperialism, against feudalism, and for the land rights of the landless. So this will continue. Certainly it is continuing. You correctly referred to the iconic Kisan Long March in Maharashtra, Nasik to Mumbai. 50,000 farmers marched for 5 days from Nasik to Mumbai, led by the All India Kisan Sabha. One of the major issues there was land rights. Apart from the indebtedness and the freedom from indebtedness, apart from minimum support price, all these issues. So therefore, today, unfortunately, the slogan of the BJP government is not land to the tiller, it has become land to the corporates. So this has to be fought. The minimum support price issue is an extremely important issue, which will also have to be fought. Very big battle has to be there. Freedom from indebtedness of the farmers, 400,000 people committing suicide. That's an important thing. Also, 2 more issues I will just like to flag in 5 seconds. The repeal of the labor codes, which are against the working class in India. These were passed by the same parliament within 7-8 days after the farm laws were passed. And they are designed to make the working class as the slaves of the corporates. That is what the central trade unions are fighting against. And that is for the whole farmer struggle has supported them on the repeal issue of the 4 labor codes. But the most important issue I would just like to say in the end, the current BJP government led by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi is now bent on selling off the country, selling off India. All the various public sector concerns, railways, airports, airlines, telecom, steel, public sector, banks, insurance, education, health, even defense, all this is being now sold to the Indian and foreign corporates. They are selling off the country. That is the patriotic struggle that is being waged by the farmers and the workers of India, by the people of India in the coming days. I'm sure with the historic victory of this farmers' struggle, we will go ahead, go forth with even more inspiration and determination and win all these remaining struggles also. And we will fight for a change in the current social order. We will fight for a revolutionary transformation in our country. And this, I'm sure, the people from all over the world will extend us solidarity in this struggle. Thank you very much. Thank you to all.
Thank you, Dr. Ashok. Inspiring as always, super inspirational as always. I hope you are staying with us because there are loads of issues. I will want to come back to you basis some of the questions. So please do stay with us. One correction in my hurried manner of speaking, and that's a big difference I made. Instead of, I think I referred to Communist Party of India. Dr. Dhawale is the Central Committee member of the Communist Party of India, bracket Marxist. And that's an important difference here in India. I want to point it out. I want to correct my mistake. And I also want to say that you have been part of the 5-member, 7-member core committee of leading these processes. So thank you so much for bringing to the table manifold issues in the 9 lessons that you talked of, and in the future you talked of. We'll come back to you, sir. Miss Morgan Odie, we're honored to have her here. She messaged me that she has something urgent coming up, so she would like to speak now. So I'll come back to you, Dr. Dhawale. Miss Morgan Odie, welcome. People who are gathered here, friends who are on the participants list, on the Facebook Live. Miss Morgan Odie has more recently been elected as the General Coordinator of La Via Campesina. La Via Campesina, as many of you know and may not know, is one of the largest platform of peasant struggles across the world, transacting Asia, Africa, Europe, and Latin Americas, and other continents that I have forgotten to speak, Australasia, for instance, the entire continent. La Via Campesina's new elected coordinator, Miss Morgan Odie, we are honored to welcome you. La Via Campesina encompasses around 200 million peasant farmers from across the world, represents and articulates their voices, but also inspires those struggles in action. Miss Morgan Odie, and very, very interesting, brings to this the question of peasantry much more centrally. She herself is a vegetable farmer and based in France. So Morgan, without much delay, sorry, we are a bit late, and I know you have to go, so if you can extend the time a bit, because all of us want to listen to you, your reflections on what you've been hearing here with reference to struggles in India, what you just heard, or what you also know much before, also with reflections to what's unfolding in your in your bit of the world, Europe, and as well as what's unfolding in other spaces which La Via Campesina encompasses. Have a great honor to welcome you here. I request you to please sort of unmute yourself as well as visualize yourself to speak to us here. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning to all. It's a great honor for me to be here. I've been very impressed by the 2 speakers who came just before me. And just to tell you that from Europe, but also I know that from all over the world, the peasant movements, members of La Via Campesina, have been extremely impressed by the peasant farmers movement that has taken place in India. We've been following it very closely during the more than 1 year that it lasted, and we were so happy when having the notice that the Indian government finally decided to withdraw these such bad laws. And I think that it gives hopes for all the peasant movements all over the world. I think this struggle that you had is a great victory for you in India, but it also really resonates all over the world for all the farmers, all the peasants. So indeed, La Via Campesina gathers more than 180 peasant organization, but also agricultural workers organization in more than 80 countries in the world, in Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas. And in all movements, the farmers, we struggle to survive. And we struggle to survive because this economic system, capitalism, is about corporate capture. It is about accumulating wealth against the people. And so we are resisting mainly because we want to survive. And doing so, we do win struggles. From my region in Europe, one of the very important struggles that we have had has been against GMOs. It has been a struggle in order to keep the control over seeds, which are so important for the peasants, for the small-scale farmers all over the world. Among the other struggles that we have been able to win are the struggles for land. For example, a very local struggle that I want to share in my region, in France, in my country, has been a struggle against a project of airport, which would have taken 2,000 hectares of agricultural land. And then the farmers stood against this project together with citizens. And finally, after many decades, we were able to stop this project. But what is needed to win? Most of the time, our struggles as peasants are long-standing struggles. They can last over decades. The struggles against this airport I was just telling you about has been for almost 50 years. The project started in the 70s, and it was finally abandoned by the government 4 years ago. So we need a lot of endurance and tenacity as peasants' movement in order to be able to win the struggle. The other important aspect to win struggles are alliances. It is key. I heard from the other speakers that it's been very key in the Indian struggle. In Europe, where I live, only around 2% of the population is farming, because most of the small-scale farmers have been destroyed over the last decades. So here, even more than in other regions of the world, we need to build alliances with the workers of the other sectors, and mainly with the poor workers, with the people who are facing similar difficulties as us. We also need to build alliances with movements like the environmental movements, because we are facing the same enemy when the corporation, which are the corporations. So this building alliance is very key. And then a third aspect, which goes with the previous one, is we need a diversity of strategies. All kinds of different strategies are valid in our struggles. It can be petitions, it can be demonstrations, it can be legal actions, and up to civil disobedience. And we need to be respectful of these different strategies, which different actors in the struggle will have, but that they should not divide us. And as you said very often, the unity of the movement is extremely key in order to ensure that we can win these struggles. At the international level, the very key struggle that our movement, La Via Campesina, has had over the last decades is a struggle against World Trade Organization, free trade, and the deregulation of agricultural market. And I think that it resonates a lot with the struggle that you had in India in favor of market regulation and fair prices for the farmers. So 30 years ago, we came together as a small-scale farmers organization in order to build joint strategies in front of the Uruguay round, which led to the creation of the WTO. And we had huge international struggles, mobilization in Seattle in '99, mobilization in Cancun, Mexico in 2003, mobilization in Hong Kong in 2005. And this was successful because since 2001, the WTO is blocked. The governments cannot reach an agreement because of the agricultural sector. They cannot reach an agreement because we've been able to mobilize very strongly. And we've mobilized, but we also have proposed something else, which is food sovereignty. Food sovereignty is now recognized in the entire world as the true and valid alternative to these free trade policies. This is about having the peoples and the governments be able to have public policies to support local food production made by small-scale producers, like many small-scale farmers. And so, well, food sovereignty is now very widely recognized. It is even now in the law and constitution of some countries like Nepal or Indonesia, for example. Yet, I must also say that most of the struggle that we have are defensive. It means that the farmers, the food producers, are being attacked by governments following the corporate interest. And in front of this, we are resisting. But I also have to say that capitalism has a huge capacity to adapt and to take other ways. And for example, at the international level, we've been able to stop WTO, but we know that the neoliberal governments and the corporations are now signing bilateral or bi-regional free trade agreements all over the world. And that these FTAs are built on deregulation of agricultural markets. And they, because of this, the prices paid to the farmers are decreasing. So liberalization in agriculture is still underway. And this is the key battle at the international level. And so now I have also a kind of question, is how to make your huge victory in India a stepping stone to stop the liberalization in agriculture, to stop free trade agreements, to stop market deregulation, and the decreasing of agricultural prices paid to farmers. How to ensure that at the international level, we take advantage of your great movement and great victory against these bad laws in order to strengthen the struggle for food sovereignty everywhere. And I think that we need to connect national struggles with international struggles. And we are very sure within La Via Campesina that the small-scale food producers all over the world, we share the same interest. We are unified against corporate power and against neoliberal governments which fall under the interest of these big corporations. So how can we unify national struggles to also have international struggles against WTO, IMF, World Bank, which are imposing all over the world these policies which are harming the small-scale family farmers. So once again, thanks a lot for all the peasants, farmers in India, which have done this amazing struggle. Thanks for having the opportunity to speak here. And thanks to the Asia-Europe People's Forum for organizing this webinar. I'm sorry, I have another meeting at 11:30, and I'm so sorry for this because I think that this discussion is really a key moment. So I will be there up to 11:30 all the time that I can. And right, thanks again.
Thank you, Morgan. Thank you, Morgan, for extending La Via Campesina's powerful solidarity with what's unfolding here with also sort of taking energy from what's unfolding here and raising not just solidarity, but also raising questions for reflection of how can there be more active, if I were not to use the word convergence, how can there be more active synergies between the various national struggles and the international struggles and processes in between. Thank you. We take that, and also your questions to the Indian comrades here, which I'm sure they'll respond to in the later bit. And there are two other questions which you raised. I mean, inspirational address, Morgan. Thank you. Two other questions you raised. Those are really, really difficult ones, though not for the Indians. And not for, I mean, those are difficult ones for anywhere. The hegemonic and the demonic ability of capitalism to reinvest and reinvent itself. I mean, there probably many books have been written on it. We know many more will probably need to be written on it. But those bits, I hope, will be towards the demise of capitalism. Because if I were to say, it's probably exhausting those demonic abilities. And if you see the recurrence of crisis and the fast recurrence of crisis, I think that points a possibility and a hope for future, whether it's towards the end or whether those contradictions have become so deep-rooted that its ability to carry on with flags is very, very muted and probably at its end. Your other bit on commodification, and I think that's an important debate. At some stage, we should have it, the question of commodification of commons, question of commodification in general, and what do we do to contest it along with the rising tide of corporate power? How do we sort of look at ebbing that? Those are important issues which you raise. I know you have to go and you may not have time to come back and answer those issues, but anybody who has questions for Morgan or for Lavia Campesina, please put them in the chat box. We'll have it over to you and then pass it on to those who ask those questions. That bit of organizing work we will be able to do. Thank you so much once again. And with this, I now welcome Comrade Amarjeet Kaur. Comrade Amarjeet Kaur, are you here? Amarjeet ji?
I'm there.
Yeah, so Comrade Amarjeet Kaur, you know, I must say something new about her introduction. I was reading an article on her where she's dubbed as, you know, she's dubbed as one of those trade union leaders who broke the glass barriers, the gender barriers of who can be and cannot be the top trade union leader. So Comrade Kaur, as you know, and she's been here in the last session where we were reflecting on the ongoing farmers movement. So very happy, Amarjeet ji, that you're joining us here again today. She is the leader, the president of the All India Trade Union Congress of the Communist Party of India, and also a person who's been mobilizing women and men right from almost several decades. I remember reading her biography when she was striking as a school-going child, and later, of course, into various factories, including the Honda factory, for instance, and several others. Rich, deep experience, rich, deep leadership on organizing workers from around the country under the banner of the All India Trade Union Congress. Honored to have you here, Comrade Kaur. Thank you for your time. I know you are at a union meeting, and you could spare some time. Thank you for being here. And there was a question referred here, so maybe you want to begin with that. Do you see, in fact, Dr. Ashok himself was talking about the question of peasant labor, and one of his lessons was the unity of working people, both who are in peasantry and those who are in what is called informal and other forms of work in the world today. So he drew that as one of the lessons. How do you see this unfolding? What do you think are your reflections on the farmer struggle from those perspectives, but also where the future shall be in your perspective, and any other issues that you want to sort of link into? Of course, we have a limitation of time, Comrade Kaur. It's about 15 minutes, and I turn it over to you, warmly welcoming you into this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. And I thank the organizers for giving this opportunity to me to share my views on this. I'm very happy that 3 speakers who spoke before me covered lots of the, the background, with Darshan Pal ji giving the chronology, how the agitation began and all. And Ashok Dhawale ji in his present strengthened his viewpoints, plus he gave the 9 points, the lessons which he said, which came out of this whole struggle. So this historic movement, I would say one of the largest in this particular format. I will say it was longest and the largest. So it is a lifetime experience for me also, because I was quite frequent to those sites of agitation, and I could encourage many of the trade union leaders to definitely reach there and have a personal feel, not only through media and all. So it was a great historic agitation, and it has not ended, it is ongoing. It was rightly told by Samyukta Kisan Morcha that they have suspended the agitation because several of the issues are still there, which were listed by my previous speakers also, those issues to be carried forward. And the question which you raised emanating from Darshan Pal ji and from Ashok Dhawale, both of them talked about workers and farmers' unity. The Samyukta Kisan Morcha and Central Platform of Trade Unions having come together on several occasions to seeing to it that we support each other and we work along with each other. I will definitely come to that. But just to recap, I would say once again reiterate that the broadest possible unity was one of the key factors for this unity. And its remaining peaceful despite all provocation was another very, very important factor, a great lesson which is told by others also. Matured response at every stage, never closing dialogue. Another important lesson. Telling firmly what we stand for, what we are struggling for. We are not denying dialogue and we are ready to talk to the governments. That strategy, having patience and maturely dealing at every level, was one of the great lessons coming out of this agitation. And as everybody said, support from all sections of the society, including from writers and theater persons. And not only that, that support. Many new skits could be written, plays were written, new songs came out, a new kind of theater coming out of that. So it's not only support of those in the field of writers, progressive writers, organizations, or the field of theater and art. It's not only they came and supported. It's also that at the site of agitation, lots of creation of new things happen there in regard to art, culture, and theater. That was something which will be a lesson for the future agitations and also very long-lasting impact. It will have not only on Samyukta Kisan Morcha leading the agitation, still ongoing, but also on the other movements in our country. It will have long-lasting impact and a great lesson. Creation of those kinds of things helps in consolidation of movement and carrying it forward. Support was national and international. That was a great support, of course, and transparency in their activities. A great lesson again for all the movements to learn. Whatever they were wanting to decide, despite all the differences, extreme opinions, then coming to consensus and then coming out with that consensus as a collective outside to the outside world. And being totally transparent, this was something great which has to be lesson for any kind of joint movements in whichever sectors we lead. Women mobilization has been talked about. There were efforts of demonizing and defamation of the movement, but the special effort was made to discourage women and to defame them, those who were participating. And they reacted on that and they increased their mobilization. So mobilization of women was great strength of this movement. And I think this is a great lesson for all the movements. This gender component becomes so important, and not only in discourse, also in mobilization, also in activities. Kisan Morcha at all the border states in this whole more than 1 year long agitation, 4 or 5 times they handed over stage to the women leaders there. Women leaders from Kisans, and they conducted the programs and agitation. Some days were dedicated to the women, those who have great names in the history of our country. So this is a great lesson out of this movement. Another thing is that the people of all age groups, from children up to very old, not only on the gender, there was so much participation on that. This was also strength of the movement. All age groups were present in that agitation. Another strength which I want to say is they invoked history. This is a great lesson. They invoked history, talked about great social reformers, dedicated days of agitations on them. They talked about freedom fighters who fought the British colonial rule. They talked of the social causes taken up by social reformers, and those social reformers were remembered on various days. They, in a way, talked about all the social movements who were for the upliftment of the vulnerable and weaker sections, exploited sections of the society, along with talking of common good to all. This strategy did work very well in integration and support, garnering support from almost further many more sections. So this unity was not suddenly coming. There were also strategies and the activities. And that's where I really salute the organizers who were handling this movement and organizing the programs. And also they succeeded in conveying their core message. Anybody, a woman, literate, illiterate, a child or a young person or old, simply they said these 3 laws are this, that's all. Don't ask us comma or full stop. Don't ask us which line needs to be amended and to be reformed in that law. Simply, these laws must go. So they could convey very successfully the core message of their movement and how it is pro-corporate and how their land will be lost and how the people will face a food security question, and Indian farmer will suffer, Indian people will suffer, Indian nation will suffer. They could do it. And the community kitchen, this was talked about by the previous speaker. You see, they cared for food not only of those who were participating, all those who were coming to extend support, and also to their tormentors. And this was viewed nationally and internationally. So gracious on the part of those who were in the movement, serving food, tea, coffee, everything, even to the police personals from whom they faced lathis. And those who at every moment they were finding some kind of irritations coming, but they were serving them also. So that great common kitchen concept worked, that service, seva ka bhav, service attitude, that won them over. Laurels from the from Indian masses as well as internationally, and the people from us, especially from Punjabis, people were asking, what is this concept of community kitchen, how it began, how they are following it. All this became a discourse. So this was something very good which came out of that movement. I would also say that civic necessities at such a place where lakhs of people every day were to interact and sit there. Their water needs, their electricity needs, their cleanliness needs, their sewerage needs. The organizing was taking care of all aspects of organizing, not only slogan shouting and giving their demand charter and all, every aspect in handling crores of money being handled, total transparency in collection, total transparency and accountability to the masses, not only those who were sitting there, to the general people at large. This transparency not only in organizing, even in fund collection, even in expenses of the fund collection. And I think this is going to be very, very rich heritage with them, and in their future agitation and movements of SKM will have further strength and support. IT sector was well managed. They created their own newspapers there at the site. The social media is working, countering the mainstream media which was speaking against farmers. So this was great strength in having that social media being created over there and having a reach out to nationally and internationally everywhere. That was great strength, which is a lesson for all the movements and for future activities of even SKM. So they could, by using that IT sector, they could expose falsehood of the government within few hours, within 12 hours, within 24 hours. They exposed the machinations of the government. And so use of IT sector is going to be very, very important thing in future also, as far as the movements and agitations are concerned. So all the support which was coming from all the sections, we trade unions were part of this support initially, not only from the days of ordinance coming, even previous phase of Modi government, when the ordinances were being brought and when AIK SCC was formed and the agitations were going, trade unions were extending them support. So this unity did not come about in a day. It was continuously a process of trade unions supporting the farmers' cause. This was happening. And Sandeep, I also want to tell that we have historical background. During pre-independence era in 1906 and 1907, the Britishers brought 3 ordinances and there was a big movement in India against Britishers bringing that ordinance. And it is working class organizing leaders and the Kisan leaders, the uncle of great martyr Bhagat Singh and Lala Lajpat Rai, founder of All India Trade Union Congress in 1920. He was founding president among other founders. So they were together. They were the leaders of 1906 and 1907 movement. And that became famous movement. And then onwards, the farmers and the workers movement together were a real fulcrum and support to the national freedom movement. So there is a historical background of working class and the farming community having come together several times in the history, pre-independent era and post-independent era. And this movement once again has brought us further much closer, not only supporting each other. In the meeting before these laws were revoked in Parliament on 25th November, we were meeting together. And in that we identified common agenda that it will not be only extending support to each other. We should also sometimes together as a Kisan Morcha and the trade union front coming out with the joint movements on common slogans. And we worked on that. And what were the issues? We said, you are against corporates, we are against corporates. Now government is bringing national monetization pipeline, like Ashok Dhawale ji was saying, selling everything. So that agenda is for us also. The agenda is for Kisans also. We focused on unemployment. We said we will focus on price rise situation. We will focus on this whole food security issue. We will focus on the labor codes issue. We will support the struggles on MSP and all other issues which are there with the farmers. That will be part of our united actions. And of course, the democratic rights. The government tried to crush the democratic movements of various sections of the society, and in that process they are attacking trade unions, and in that process they had every attitude, every method, every mechanism, every conspiracy they tried to utilize to crush this Kisan movement. So every other single movement was looking towards this farmers' agitation as a great hope. And they all wanted it must be victorious. And with that attitude, everyone wanted to give their maximum in support of this. So it was not only extending support, it was also looking towards future. That if we succeed in this movement, then there is a bright future for other movements. And all the lessons learned from this movement, if those get replicated in the future movements, it will be great thing for our people of our country, for nation to have a proper direction to be taken towards. And the trade unions have called it about its strike on 23rd, 24th February as a Mission India. It's not only Mission UP and Mission Uttarakhand. These are elections, and we want, as told by previous speakers from India, that we want BJP-free governments there. That's true. Then we are also looking toward 2024 parliamentary election. We want to look beyond 2024, as all the three speakers are saying, how we have to see to it that the vulnerable sections, the producers, the wealth producers, the workers and farmers, those communities and the people in the future have their say for an egalitarian society to be built up. So from that point of view, it's very, very important that all the lessons learned we carry forward. So the democratic rights is something very important, as it is being crushed day in and day night. All democratic institutions of our country are being used and misused, I should say, in just scuttling the voice of opposition. Several of the people are languishing in jail, and this threat is understood by all sections of the society. So succeeding in agitations and making the government bow down is something which has rejuvenated all those people who stand with the Indian Constitution. We stand with the secular democracy of our country, defeating the communal agenda of the government and bringing everybody together on board, all religion, all caste, all languages, all regions, all geographical areas, all food habits, everybody coming together is something great strength. Perhaps we needed it. That kind of vaccine we needed. That fresh breath we needed. The way the people were feeling suffocated. So this movement, by bringing everybody together, has really given jolt to the communal agenda, and it is a great lesson. I would like to come to the end because perhaps there is one more speaker also. Now the Kisans have come for 31st January to be observed as a black day on their demands. So for future course of action, we the trade unions are going to extend our support in properly mobilization of observing that day. And Kisan Morcha has already extended their support to our 2-day strike on 23rd and 24th February. They have already given their support. And as I mentioned, the kind of agenda we will take up together, that means in the coming days, our platform of trade unions and the Samyukta Kisan Morcha will be working together on these issues also, while continuing our own agitations and movements relating to our sectors, but sometimes coming together for the national cause to see to it that India is steered out of this communal politics, and India is steered out of cell of our nation. India is steered off out of this whole corporate loot, and we really, the Indian masses, once again get rejuvenated to fulfill the dreams of our freedom fighters who wanted to liberate India, actually to bring solutions to all the miseries which Indian people were suffering with, poverty or illiteracy or ill health or no shelter, all those issues which our freedom fighters dreamed of will be solved after we become an independent India. So naturally, the future lies in this thing. If you ask me, the future vision is to build up larger movements, and this has become an important figure, the working masses of rural and urban India, in the name of Samyukta Kisan Morcha and the platform of central trade unions. Their coming together is a way forward, I should say. All other sections of the society, in respective of their agitations, they will go ahead, but time to time, they all will be coming together, extending support to each other. That is the way forward. And I think as a working class representing here as the ITUC, I assure my Kisan Morcha friends that we had decided as central trade unions, we will give unconditional support to any national call they will be giving. And we continued that. And now also we promise our unconditional support to all their national calls will be there. And similarly, we will be working together in future as we are going to extend support to each other in strike and on the Black Day observation on 31st January and strike of 23rd and 24th February. Thank you for giving this opportunity to me. We are really very, very happy on the outcome of Samyukta Kisan Morcha, but we are very, very careful and very, as the Kisan Morcha is, because key important issues are still there and they have to struggle for it. So very difficult days ahead still are there. And that's we realize, and that's why unconditional support will be there to the future fight for SKM. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Kaur. Brilliant message of hope, of history, of lessons of history, of 1906, 1907. We can't forget many histories. We should not. Only some prisons of history, such as colonialism, is what we need to escape from, and hopefully we will escape. The prisons of capitalism we need to escape from. So we can't generalize all prisons of history. And I think some of those beautiful prisons of history are those you pointed to, the struggles ahead, the detailed analysis of where is the labor present, sort of solidarity working, how is that axis working. Thank you, Comrade Kaur. We're running a bit short of time, and there's a technical glitch. Sorry, those who are listening in, sorry somewhat to the speakers, but I, without much further ado, want to invite our comrade Hashim bin Rashid, who's been waiting in the wings. Sorry, comrade, for this extending it. Hashim is one among the peasant struggle members and leaders in Pakistan, in western part of Punjab. He's a researcher. He's been writing articles and books. So in Europe, elsewhere, he's an integral part of the Pakistan Kisan Rabita. So without much ado and taking more time for introductions, Hashim, given the time, may I quickly request you, we want to have a quick 5-7 minutes of questions if this webinar doesn't allow us to extend further beyond 4:30. But may I invite you for your crucial remarks on how you see these movements. What do you think waits in several other countries? You've been researching these issues. You have direct groundwork going on. Can you tell us a bit more?
Thank you so much, Sandeep. And it has been a pleasure to listen to Dr. Ashok, Dr. Darshan Pal, Amarjeet ji. It is a pleasure to sit amongst such amazing leaders, and it's a difficult task to be the last speaker when the speakers before me are so senior and such an inspiration to all of us. I think it's kind of my reflection is kind of going to be from what they have all said. I think it's very important to think about the energy and the inspiration that the Indian farmers movement has generated for the people of South Asia. And the victory of the Indian farmers movement is I would say, the tip of the iceberg of sort of unrest building across rural South Asia, which is a function of decades of state and market-led exploitation of both nature and peasants, often rooted in colonial relations. And it has spurred diverse rural movements across the region. Rural land, markets, and peoples are once again the sites for another resource grab by a range of local, national, and transnational actors. I think the inspiration that this brings to rural movements across South Asia makes us remember that we can perhaps go back to the early to mid 1900s, where movements believed another rural world was possible. Much like Amarjeet ji and Dr. Ashok both sort of spoke about the colonial period and the types of movements that existed back then. And the critical question we must ask, and we must ask collectively, is rural emancipation possible? And what would it look like? And perhaps the reflection has to be based on the actual practice of movements rather than sort of old school theorizing. And so it's important, I think, from the inspiration that we take from the Indian farmers movement to bring this question back. Now I will focus on sort of three issues: markets, ecology, and sort of land or landlessness. And I'll try to keep it short. First, I think the old focus of the left remained the issue of land. So old peasant movements very much focused on the issue of land, while we used to consider that the politics around agrarian markets was either secondary or something that was instrumental. At least that's the experience of sort of the offshoot of the All India Kisan Sabha in Pakistan, the West Pakistan Kisan Committee. While the land question is certainly important today, I think it is important, and the Indian farmers movement in particular puts it in stark focus for us, that rural markets are essential spaces for rural politics because they are integral mediators of where rural surplus goes. The three laws that were passed in India are a clear indicator that agribusiness understands that it needs to remove the protections available to farmers in the market to be able to expropriate more rural surplus. And rural surplus, where it goes, is not just a question relevant for the capitalist state and agribusiness. It is very much a question that rural movements are organizing around, have organized around, whether in terms of the nationalization of plantations, the re-territorialization of wheat and cotton markets, or demands around subsidies and support prices today. Similarly, rural movements across South Asia continue to organize around WTO negotiations, as well as regional and bilateral trade deals, which promise to remove the few protections available that remain in agriculture. Moreover, the issue of markets intersects closely with the working class politics, in particular around the threat to commodity prices that Ashok ji spoke about. And it is very similar what has been happening in Pakistan. So, however, it is important for us to recognize that the victories of South Asian rural movements around issues of subsidies and remunerative prices do not in themselves transform agricultural markets into spaces that can evenly benefit all farmers. Even though these are important victories that cannot be discounted, perhaps we must also begin to imagine now what kind of agricultural markets do we need that will support all classes of farmers. But I think it is important here to conclude with the recognition that the Indian farmers movement has shown us that neoliberal market reform can be resisted, and that farmers can develop their own vision of agricultural markets based on new principles such as food sovereignty. The second thing to talk about is sort of the question of ecology, and I'll try to keep it short here. I think one of the most important things that we've begun to recognize today is the ecological consequences of the green revolution and industrial agriculture in terms of both the destruction of land and livelihoods. Land is unable to regenerate without massive investments out of the pockets of farmers. And there are, in particular, major responses from peasant movements, including the KRRS, where Chukki ji was supposed to join us today, Monlar in Sri Lanka and the Kisan Mazdoor Tehreek in Pakistan are trying to develop alternate practices around peasant agroecology. And these practices will have to be thought about if we want to sort of think about the future of farming or sustainable farming going into the future. Three, the issue of landlessness. Any rural resistance in South Asia today can only acquire momentum if it attends to the region's vast landless population. Until the photographs of millions of desperate migrant workers returning to villages during India's pandemic lockdowns hit the global media, their stories and struggles have continued to evade popular consciousness. I think we've kind of had a belief that the people who moved from the rural into the urban are now urban or proletariat, and their links to the rural are broken. And in all three countries, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and India, it's been very clear that massive population transfers back into the rural have taken place as soon as urban jobs have gone away. And that, in effect, helps us connect the rural-urban question as integral questions that have to be thought about together. Moreover, agricultural workers' unions continue to exist across South Asia in the form of labor organizations, home-based workers' unions, caste-based organizations, and plantation workers' unions. In addition to resisting predatory microfinance and struggling for fair wages and decent work conditions, rural landless movements are raising the land question again, as well as merging the questions of urban and rural labor from the vantage point of the rural. And any future answer will require the recognition of both the right to land as well as the right to decent work. We'll kind of conclude now. I think going forward, it is important for us to craft a vision to shape and unify diverse rural struggles. It is clear that our opponents, agribusiness, international financial institutions, and policy think tanks are pushing their visions for the future of rural South Asia. We need ours. The Indian farmers movement points us in those directions. From their steadfast victory, many lessons can be learned, especially the conviction that Darshan Pal ji and Ashok ji spoke about. Strong grassroots organizing has shown us that can bring an end to an authoritarian and fascist, and can force an authoritarian and fascist state to back down. On the borders of Delhi, the Indian farmers movement developed a new infrastructure of protests, which Amarjeet ji spoke about in detail. Being able to maintain such a gherav for a year is unprecedented territory. It is important for us to learn the lessons, not just of sort of doing mass rallies, but how do you live? How do you stay in a single place for a year without being bought out while facing violence and doing the boring everyday work of keeping people together? It is time for us to believe that another future is possible for rural South Asia today. There is a need for a coherent yet situated emancipatory vision that confronts the challenges of markets, land, labor, and ecology, and addresses the contradictions of class, gender, caste, and ideology. So that's it from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Katie, I'm not trying to put you in a spot. We're running out of time. I don't know if the technical glitch will allow us to go beyond 4:30. If we do, then we have time for some questions which we've gathered. Katie, over to you.
I think, thank you, Sandeep. And thank you to all of our speakers. What an amazingly rich panel and so many really fascinating interventions. Indeed, we were hoping to have some time for a question and answer, and we've received several fantastic questions in the Q&A box. but we do need to close the webinar shortly, and we're so grateful to everyone who has stayed with us. But I think that what I would suggest we do is draw our inspiration for a next webinar from these incredible questions in the Q&A, rather than trying to rush through the answer, although I would invite any of the speakers who would like to jump in the chat box to do that. And otherwise, I think I would, if it's all right with you, Sandeep, hand directly to you for a quick wrap up of some of the key overview points. And then I think we should close in the next few minutes to avoid being thrown out of our Zoom.
Hello.
Indeed.
Katie. Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you. Do you hear me?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Katie, can you hear us? My internet is not working, so hello. Sorry about this glitch. My internet doesn't seem to be working. Hello. Katie, can you hear me?
Sandeep, we can hear you. I don't know if Katie is able to hear, but we can hear you.
Sandeep, we can hear you.
Sorry about this little technical glitches in the end. We have a lot of very interesting questions. I think Katie was saying that when she got cut off, very interesting questions. If you have like a one minute, we have our speakers here, just the top line closing, because rather than me spending time in trying to bring this to a conclusion, I'd rather have the time for you to give one minute your closing remarks, please, to all the speakers in whichever order, please. We run out of time, and webinar limit is there, so this is the problem. We're trying to negotiate it, can't. So can I begin with Darshan Pal ji for 1 minute statement?
No,
your message.
No, I want to say that all in today's webinar, all the 4 or 5 speakers, if we comprehend, or if we say comprehend and analyze the views of all the 5s, I think a good strategy and tactics for the future farmers movement and movement to resolve the agrarian crisis for a longer period can be made.
Thank you, Darshan ji, and thank you for staying with us. Dr. Kaur, Dr. Amarjeet Kaur, I see you. So could you please give your 1 minute closing inspiration?
Yes, I think not only leading to the solutions of agrarian culture, agrarian sector, our agriculture, also leading to what happens in rural India when there is a problem. Then the people move to urban area and they keep links with the rural India also, but then lots of problems getting increased in urban India, those migrant labor not getting all the services. This issue will also become a part and parcel of the future strategies, how to do it. Like Manarega, the people started talking about urban employment guarantee, etc. Thirdly, it is much more important for overall neoliberal economic model to be challenged for the workers and farmers movement to come together. It will be important. And where our friend from Pakistan was talking, I remember how the support was coming from Pakistan for this Kisan Morcha movement also, which was something great. And we trade unions keep connections with each other region-wise as well as internationally also. It will be very, very important if this model could be taken forward for workers and farmers' unity in all the areas, in all the countries, in all the continents. It will help in a great way. Lastly, I feel when Hashim was talking about alternative strategies in India, already there are talks about to address the miseries and the problems of the small farmers, the cooperatives to help them. That kind of a movement, and also different alternatives to counter, as our friend from abroad, she was talking about Campesina movement, the Via Campesina movement. She was talking about how these small producers in future need to be helped, and that is how nationally, internationally we have to look at it. So I think in our country also, out of these presentation and plus how future things evolve, we will also have to think in terms of alternatives for, especially for our poor farmers, and also land to the landless, surplus land with the governments lying. That issue becomes important. So these are the issues for future for us to be taken forward.
Thank you, Amarjeet ji, Comrade Amarjeet. Thank you. I quickly invite, sorry, I'm almost panicking and rushing. I invite Dr. Ashok Dhawale. Dr. Ashok Dhawale, are you there? So maybe some inputs from you, Hashim bhai, since you're here.
Yeah. Just quickly, I think it's just to reiterate. Of course, the Indian farmers movement has been a great inspiration to movements in Pakistan, both sort of in resisting land grabs and in particular to the production of sort of music and dialogue, but also I think it's allowed us to start having debates or around issues where there was no clarity in the big farmers movement, such as the WTO. And these are sort of debates that are ongoing and increasingly, I remember from sort of 3-4 years ago, farmers were kind of confused around them, and in recent meetings, sort of issues of the class composition of the farmers' leadership as well as sort of ideological positions have begun to come up. And we are hopeful, especially in the importance of sort of dialogue between movements, is going to be an essential way for us to sort of work together and move forward. So that's it.
Thank you. I request Dr. Ashok Dhawale for his concluding 1 minute, 1.5 minute remarks, please.
It has been an excellent webinar, and really very good takeaways from this. Let me just conclude by saying that the farmers' movement in India, what it basically represented was a revolt by the have-nots against the haves. And that is the issue all over the world today, in the capitalist world, where we have seen, I referred to the World Hunger Index, we have just seen the Oxfam World Inequality Report, which is just terrifying. And I think that this entire strategy of neoliberalism, of imperialism, and its effects on all the global south, this has to be fought tooth and nail. And unless that is done, we have seen it in the COVID also. The whole COVID pandemic and whatever the results of it have been in terms of recession, in terms of unemployment, in terms of tremendous social evils, all this, and the whole vaccine imperialism which is also going on, the tremendous super profits by the corporates. I think all this, forms a part of one integral whole, which has to be fought together by all of us together, the farmers, the workers, the middle classes, the intellectuals, by all sections of society, which really want that another world is possible. I think for this, all of us must really come together, put our shoulders to the wheel, mobilize the entire, every country in the world, etc., and all the people in that country against the rule of capital. That is the most important thing, I think, the lesson that we should draw from this victorious Indian farmers' struggle. Thank you.
Thank you. Deeply, deeply honored for listening to all those lessons. Deeply honored to be here and learning from you. Deeply honored to be with my co-moderator, Katie, and all our organizing team. Tabby put it all together. So many other colleagues, Shoshovan, Tabby, Anu Chinoy, Bisnu, who designed the poster. So my gratitude goes to all in a hurry. I'm reminded of my late comrade Samir Amin's take on these. What you have done, what you are doing and making new histories, is that you are actually breaking the chain of accumulation by dispossession. So I think all that I've heard, the huge accumulation that is happening by actually dispossessing people, not just in rural or what is called the countryside, but also in the cities and the towns of this rapidly, vacuously urbanizing world. And that where the train meets. So this whole question of dispossessing people of everything virtually, tomorrow probably of air as well. So I think that trajectory has to be challenged, has to be defeated. And I think the farmers' movement, the peasant struggles here and elsewhere show a hope, a glimmer of hope. And I think a lot of hope in this day and age, in this century, when in the second decade of the century, we saw such crisis for working peoples all over the world, such kind of pauperization and precaritization, that this particular, the third decade, if I may call it, of this century, brings with it, apart from all those sort of negative stories, the elixirs of hope, some ideas of where to go in future. We won't be able to do justice to all the issues that have been arisen in this discussion today. What, as Katie was saying, I concur with her and I support her in that promise to take these issues which have emerged as questions as the base starting point of our next conversation. I hope we will, of course, be requesting you, but I do hope on behalf of the organizers that comrades, leaders who are here could join us one more round at your convenience, which is when we will organize this second of these series, hopefully. We have very important issues coming for Darshanji in terms of where did you see the solidarity come from? What are the lessons? How come a lot of young people join the movement? Because it is an adage that young are not interested in farming, which of course is false. But how were they mobilized? How did they join? Where did you see the role of women, the leadership of women, the recognition of women as farmers? I think more than in words, more than in papers, was seen in practice. How did that happen? So there are deep lessons and deep reflections to make to Dr. Ashok Dhawale. So how do you see the movement was structured? How was the leadership inculcated? These are lessons which I think will help. Somebody wanted from Ethiopia to know, how do we do after 1 year-long civil war and a repression? How do we make a peaceful movement? I think these are deeper reflections and lessons which would have been very, very interesting and important to listen your views on. The idea, how do you sort of inculcate and teach and mentor movement leadership, second line leaderships, front line leaderships? How does that happen? Do people teach us? And what's that interface? So I think it's very interesting issues which have come up in the discussions. What are the lessons of farmers' movement to organize countryside people's movement against neoliberal policy? I think the idea that Dr. Amarjeet was speaking to, how do we sort of together give a call? What you mentioned maybe in on the annual. I think these are some of the issues. The issue of sustainability and ecological agricultures, the issue of land rights and land to the tiller, the question of how do we make the arrested issue of land reforms possible? How can it get the elixir of the workers' formations as well as the peasant formations? How can it become a central key demand of actually territorial demand for people's struggles all over the world? So many issues are coming up. I'm not going to be able to sort of list every single question. What we are going to do as organizers is to put them all together, share them with you, and hopefully with your consent and with your interest, be able to bring you back. I take this opportunity to deeply express gratitude to all our panelists for your time, to all our organizers for your time, and more importantly, to all those from different parts of the world who joined in for the last 2 hours and a quarter and listen in and tune into these direct leadership experiences of struggle, to those lessons of struggles, to the hope and the call they are giving to you of extended solidarity. Thank you very much, colleagues who joined us. Thank you to those who tuned into Facebook, even if momentarily. I'm sure you would not have been untouched, and I'm sure you wouldn't have left the Facebook. I'm sure you wouldn't have been untouched by the message of hope, by the fire of struggles. by the idea of futures, which were the sum and substance, if I may say, of this 2.25 hour conversation. Thank you so much. Once again, I want to hand it over to you, Katie, in case you want to give certain very, in the end, sorry to put you once again in the spot. I have this unique habit of doing so. So if you have any final remarks before we end the seminar with a word of gratitude to all our leaders and speakers and panelists and listeners. Over to you, Katie.
I think I can only echo your great words, Sandeep, to say thank you so much to our brilliant panelists for bringing so many insights and such inspiration. And indeed, we will look for a way to continue this conversation, because I can feel a real hunger here in the virtual room to continue learning from these amazing experiences. So thank you, and thank you to everyone for joining us today.